Welcome to the Rollga podcast. This is episode 005 featuring my friend Devin Hill, who is an incredibly talented photographer that started his journey right here in central Minnesota. Devin, he has an amazing style and eye for photo and video that's allowed for scaling his business, Super Cooper Shooter, and it's also allowed for a lot of partnering with other businesses that includes but is not limited to Red Bull. This was a somewhat technical conversation about photography, but there were some flavors of fitness, but also where content creation is going. So let's jump into the conversation. All right, Super Cooper, we are live. What's up, my friend?
What is happening? How are you?
Good, man. This setup. So first time we're doing a multi-cam podcast. This was a real beast to get set up. So I couldn't think of a better person to do it with than the one, the only Super Cooper.
Thank you. This is such a sweet setup. I love it.
Devin, why don't you give us a background of who you are and just kind of what you do?
I am a photographer here in St. Cloud, Minnesota, central Minnesota. I go as now like a freelance photographer doing weddings, commercial work, now working with the EXR Motorsport, which is down in Elk River, taking photographs with the snowcross events, and then soon to be with Red Bull pretty soon. So I love traveling, so you'll probably see tons of photos of the photos I take traveling from state to state. So
sweet. Tell me about Red Bull. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I kind of got approached this couple past months ago. And last year I just took photos for free for an event, and then the event coordinator contacted me and said, do you want to take photos for our snowcross event? And I took photos for the snowcross event, and then a Red Bull representative contacted me and was like, hey, we love your photos. Do you want to work this Red Bull event for us? And we'll get you in contact with the right people. So come March 1st, I'll be shooting the Red Bull event that's here in Elk River. So
crazy. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. Pretty big for me. I never thought I'd be working like with the Red Bull event, and hopefully Red Bull athletes is the big goal.
So what specifically is the event in Elk River?
It is snowcross by Amsoil. I'm not really familiar with the oil company, but I just said, Red Bull, I really want to work with them. And there is some freestyle snowcross athletes that I've been working with right now. I've been shooting photos of Andrew Carlson. They own ERX Motorsports, and that is down in Elk River. So,
isn't that the truth though? Like, it all starts by just getting your feet wet, going and just exposing yourself to different things like you never would have thought you would have done, but it's just weird how kind of paths line up like that.
Yeah, it really does. I always feel like the best way to start is doing free work. And that is just, like you said, get your feet wet, and it opens up tons of doors, because when people see you do something that's maybe out of your comfort zone or something that you love to do, they're more interested in bringing that value with them and to their company or to their brands. And they really love people that love doing what they love to do. So,
sure. And that comes through so loudly with all of your work, Devin. Like I've been following you for a couple of years now, and you have such a unique style. Like when I look at your photos, I'm like, because when you look, it's not only perfection on the composition, it's perfection in the editing. You just have something that's unmatched.
Thank you.
And it inspires me when I see your work. I'm like, man, I want to be better when I see your work.
And a lot of that goes with like trying to do better every single time I take a new photo. I'm always working on composition, and sometimes I'm just always rewatching YouTube. And I might watch the same YouTube video 1 month and then rewatch it couple months later. I think always being able to grow, and then also dabbing into other people's styles and colors. And I spend a lot of time in the editing workroom just fine tweaking photos, and sometimes I'll go back to it and be like, I don't like it, and then redo it again.
Yeah, for sure. I can't count the number of times I'll start editing a photo and be like, that's a little too edited, or I need to add a little bit something.
Yeah. And we're all our worst critics because we're always criticizing our work, trying to make it even better than it was before. And you might learn something new 1 week, and then you learn something new the next, and you're like, let me take what I learned this week and bring it back to an old project. And you start kind of like gaining a creative flow, and you develop even more skills, and you get better and better every single time you, I guess, essentially practice.
So let's unpack this a little bit. YouTube University. I think so. I have a master's degree, of 2 bachelor's degrees, and I've learned hands down way more in context of YouTube University than I have with any of my formal degrees. Agree or disagree, Devin?
Agree. 100% agree. Well, there is some points where I'm like, man, I really wish I would have went to school for some of these things. Like this whole lighting setup, the 2 cameras. I really wish I probably would have went to school for it because it's something that a school would provide for you. They provide the equipment, the right lights, the right sound, and it takes a while to build up to it. It's not like something that happens just overnight, where a school really provides you all the resources that you do need, which is one thing I wish I had when starting. So
you think you'll go back to school and maybe get more into the video side? What are you thinking there?
With the video side, not so much. If I was trying to take up like cinematography or direct commercials or direct films, that's where I probably would see myself going to school for. But right now, I like being on a kind of like personal level, either with businesses or with people, and building something that's not super, super over the top, but something that they can just gravitate to, even if it's just with a cell phone.
For sure. Now, you've been shooting predominantly photo for a little while, but you're kind of dabbling in that space of video. So you're learning that you're going. I've seen some of your hybrid coverage. It's really good. And let me tell you, it is so hard. I don't know how you do it. Do hybrid coverage where you have to think photo and video and flipping settings and going back and forth.
Yes.
That's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. What makes it a little bit easier is the camera I use. I shoot Sony. You're on Canon, and with Sony, you get so many more customizable options. So being able to flip on the fly, kind of like why I go as Super Cooper shooter. I like to shoot on the fly and be able to switch my settings super quick. And with photo, it's really easy. And now with video, it's a little bit more difficult. But like I said, practice makes it a little bit easier over time. So that's why I like the hybrid shooting now.
I struggle with it because, say I'm shooting photo, and even though, I think my R5, it has a couple different set options, but still I notice I bumped the shutter button. All of a sudden I'll be shooting 120 frames and a 23 frame, film record. And it's just a lot of stuff to kind of keep in mind. But what I really appreciate now dabbling into the video world, and to your point about film school, is there's a lot of people that touch sets. There's a lot of people who just do sound design. And I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah. There's so many niches in just what we do. Like you said, sound design, where people just go straight to school for sound. And there's people that go to school just for working with lenses and cinematography, and they know so much about that, but they don't know anything about the editing process. And you have these editors now, and it's just crazy that I'm thinking, now that I'm in video, I'm watching these movies, I'm like, wow, this is some crazy sound, or the lens choice on this is amazing. I wonder what camera they use, things like that.
100%. When I watch Netflix films now, and I'm a little bit more in tune to film, keep in mind when I shoot video, I know a little bit to be dangerous with everything. I'm a one-man army for the most part when I shoot video.
Yeah.
But when you watch these Netflix documentaries or these Netflix movies, I have so much more appreciation for what I'm watching. To your point about focal length, or to your point about how they frame up shots, or how they're able to record ambient sounds, but also the dialogue and just everything that goes into it. I'm like, wow.
It just blows your mind.
I know nothing.
And their teams that are on the teams on set is just, you think, you're a one-man show or a one-man army, and there's like teams of 20 making this all work, and it seems flawless. You don't see anything behind the scenes on these movies until the movies are released.
So I was watching some YouTube video about how to record better interviews, And I realized that when they shoot, just interview content, it's the same clip shot about 6 times at 6 different angles. And it just blows my mind about how much more goes into video. And it makes me appreciate people that do it very well, I think, is a summary.
Yeah, they're just so skilled at what they do.
Oh, yeah. And it's repetition. It's not like, when I do photo coverage for something, I just go out, take my camera, boom, good to go. But when you do video, you got to be so much more methodical about what you're doing.
Always just thinking about the story ahead of time. And then, piecing together all of it after is also a lot more work now too. And they're always worried about sound, but having those 3 different angles tell a story and gives you different perspectives. It's just, they're artists.
Yeah, for sure. And there's something to it where they're not only recording these people, but the way that they can encourage the actors to build on each other, and the more reps, it just makes me appreciate. So film is one thing, getting into the video side, but then you realize there's a whole pocket of tapping into actors and people that do that really well. And it's, again, when I watch movies now, I have such appreciation for what these people do.
Right.
It makes me put myself in my place and be like, I know nothing.
Same. I feel the same.
Love it. So you're predominantly a photo shooter, and you've had some success in that space, and you shoot Sony. Now let's get a little bit technical, because I think that's why we all love photography, because there's a lot of technicalness to it. Say you're stuck with one focal length, one lens, the rest of your life. What are you picking?
I'm picking a 16 to 35 mil 2.8, which is what's Sony. It is. I picked it up maybe about 3 months ago. Love it ever since, and it's pretty much never been taken off my camera now. Before then, it was like the 70-200, which is a huge long lens, heavy lens. But the 16 to 35, being able to go super wide, but then also to stick in a natural like 35. I feel like that is a kind of like the perfect, maybe 50 mil, but 35 just seems a little bit more perfect. So how's that going to work out? So you're going to be doing some Red Bull coverage. You're going to want some telephoto to that, I assume, right? That is 100% telephoto. So I will not go anything less than the 70-200. And that's pretty much because I want the bokeh when I get shots of them going in the air, snow going everywhere, and I don't want to get like the crowd in the background. But then I might stick on the 50 mil because it's very natural to the eye, and when a person views these photos, they gravitate towards these photos because it seems natural to them, because that's exactly what the eye sees, is that 50 mil perspective. So if I catch like the crowd reacting, that'd be sweet.
I'm a bokeh whore.
I see that. Yes.
I only shoot compression. I only shoot bokeh. I just love it. That's just what I like.
And I see that you like been picking up the macro lenses, which so much bokeh. And that is hard to shoot with. I'm pretty sure you've noticed that as well. And I'm not sure if you're trying to take a photo of a flower and the wind's just blowing everywhere. That is extremely hard to get it all in focus. And I feel like to capture something of that level and that small, you need like zero wind, perfect light, and then even a tripod just to, get it super sharp.
For sure. Macro photography, super interesting. When you see these photos of snowflakes and you see these, and you just kind of blow past them in your feed, and you're like, oh, that's cool. That's a really detailed shot. Next. And then when you start taking these photos, to your point, you realize what goes into them. You're like, wow, how do they get the whole thing in focus? Like that's something, because macro, you get a little sliver of what's in focus. So they're stacking photos usually. It's just, it's an editing masterpiece.
Yes. They're stacking photos. I thought it was like one photo done.
Oh, sometimes, so macro sliders are a thing, and I've played around with a little bit, where you take a photo in different cross sections and you stitch them together. Kind of like when I have a couple photos on my wall where I took a landscape, took like 8 photos and merged them all together. So kind of same phenomenon.
Oh yeah, that's a high quality photo and extremely large.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You RIP hard drive space.
It just disappears.
Yeah. But macro, so for me, when I pick out lenses, 50 mils is probably what I would stick with if I was stuck. I think the Canon RF 1.2, I think that's the one I got. lens of perfection. I think it's just all around best lens, but I do reach for my 7200. But one lens that I think I appreciate the most, only because I love compression, I love the focal length, the 85, I think is just my favorite hands down.
And you get some beautiful bokeh with it. And yours stops down to probably like 1.4.
1.2, I think.
Oh, that's just crispy.
It's amazing. And I've learned that when you start to get into that glass space and you have lenses that can produce those images, that's what really makes your work pop. Yes.
And yeah, with the 85, it really, like you said, compresses and you get that bokeh that you really, really, really want to see. And when I first started photography, that was my favorite lens. I used it all the time, 100% all the time. And then I slowly, wanted to dabble into different photos and different lenses. And that's where I also gravitated to the 50 mil, which I haven't used in a long time. But everyone calls it the Nifty 50, except everyone has the Nifty 50 for their crop frame, but no one ever really uses it for their full frame. And you like it so much, and it's sweet. It's such a great lens. So
looks like we're going audio only. Camera turned off. That's okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, we got a little bit though.
Yeah.
So Devin, when you first got into photography, how did you decide that you want to do more weddings or more sports photography? Kind of what was your decision point there with to say, how did you find what you like to shoot?
I feel like that's still an ongoing thing right now.
Okay.
When I started jumping into photography, it became a thing of people contacting me and saying, hey, can you shoot some photos with me? And I feel like I'm a very personal person and easy to talk to. So being outgoing and talking to people and shooting their photos, it just seemed very natural to me. And because I like to travel, I knew about all these places, and started couples wanted to be like, hey, can I get photos in this kind of scenic area? And that's how it all kind of came to be. And then slowly the weddings came. I actually shot a couple for free. I just wanted to dabble into it because I wanted to make it a full-time business, but I didn't know which direction to go to make it a full-time business, either doing like real estate, automotives. And I thought about, I'll just do weddings for now. And I like what I do. And then I'll slowly trickle in all these other niches. Like I love shooting automotives. I love shooting houses, ironically, just not the interiors, just the exteriors. I like shooting flowers and landscapes. And when I post these photos, people kind of like figure out, oh, this is who he is and what he likes to also shoot. And people, like I said, like to see you flourish and like to see what you love to do. So that's why it really got me doing kind of like the wedding photography. And now being able to work in events, I started like shooting events for free. So.
Sure. When you got into wedding photography, do you have a couple weddings booked up this summer, or are you pivoting?
I am still super booked up for weddings.
Okay.
I just recently went full time because I used to work for Centricare, which is here in Minnesota. And after leaving full time, I was able to dabble into everything else that I like to do, even picking up the drone and doing kind of like drone work. But I don't have a license for that yet, so can't quite like commercialize what I can do with the drone. So as I'm full time, I picked up doing events, like I said, Red Bull, which happened really quick. And then after the event, I think I'm gonna try and get into like skydiving and doing photos for skydivers this year. But right now it's really cold out and it kind of is too chilly to skydive. And yeah, I just hope to do a little bit more traveling with my photography and also a little bit more video work and maybe trying to put together some, some travel content.
Yeah, you're like a bird. I've seen you all over these places with the photos you're taking, and it seems like all the way out West Coast. You spend some time out there. It's truly remarkable. Let's go back to weddings for a second. So I've shot in one wedding to date. It was like a friend that just, had some cancellations with something happened. They're like, can you shoot some photos for me? Like, yeah, absolutely. Whatever. Did it. And I've never been that stressed out for a day with all the photos that they wanted. And I still don't feel like I hit all of them. What are your thoughts with weddings? Like, is that your jam? You like the stress behind them, or to me, I felt like I was the project manager. I'm sitting there like, all right, we got to get this next photo that you wanted. And it kind of just felt like I was on a watch the whole time.
That's kind of what it feels like, project manager. When I first started doing it, I felt like I was the one in charge, and I still feel like I'm the one in charge. They might have like a wedding coordinator, but a lot of the stress does go on me. But I've been in the battlefield enough to know that like I just keep my composure. And
for sure, I thought it was super stressful the whole time. Like I was smart enough to say, okay, what's the shot list? Like, what do you want? Let's create a checklist of photos you want. But then as I'm realizing like, okay, I got 6 hours that I'm going to spend here, and we're like 4 hours in, we got like 2/3 of this list to go. Like, all right, let's keep this going. And you kind of feel like you're just harassing the people the whole time.
Yeah. Well, now that I've been doing it so much, I just have the shot list in my head. I'll still contact my couples and say, hey, is there any particular shot you really want that you might see on Pinterest or Facebook or any type of internet social media? And they'll tell me, and then I'll just stick it in my head, and then I'll bring my shot list. But majority of the time, I don't really check up on my shot list because it's all just in my mind. And I've been doing it so much that I just focus on the couple, and just trying to make them happy is the biggest deal of the day because it's their day. And I'd rather take the stress than them take the stress. So
one thing I love about your work, Devin, and this is what I think you're the most talented at, making people look natural in photographs. So I've taken a couple like YouTube courses or whatever they call it, Udemy, or I forget the subscription source I have where you can get some education, and they teach you about posing. Okay. So you're walking through someone to like, all right, do this, do this, do this. And then they just look stupid, in the photo. And like you could tell in their eyes, they just look uncomfortable. What was your experience there?
That's also really uncomfortable when I first got started. And then what I usually now do is I hold maybe like a 15 to 20 minute conversation piece, and that just breaks the ice, make sure they're comfortable. I also tell them, you're going to see a camera in your face. I just want you to be all very just natural. Just be yourself, because if you're looking unnatural, it's not going to be you. So having every single client or every single person I take a photograph of, they're a little bit nervous at first, but after like the first 5 minutes, the ice is broken. It's all running water and it's flow, and the laugh and the giggling, things like that. And even if they're being serious, sometimes when I take a photo of a man or a guy, I'm like, just be macho.
Yeah, be an actor. And I think that there's some truth to that. Whether taking event photography, there's something to finish line photos that you get that expression in someone's face. And that's, I've covered a few events in my time, and there's just something beautiful about seeing someone just gun it, going all out. Then you get the other extreme, the people that try to look cool across the finish line, they just look stupid, but whatever. But that's cool. So you're doing motocross.
Snowcross.
How are you going to catch the emotions with people who are in these big helmets? What's going to happen there?
That is like, so as I've been taking photos, there's no emotions when you're looking through a helmet. You can only see their eyes, but it's if you only have a high quality camera or high quality lens, where I would see the emotions is them on the finish lines or them just going the full on cheer. And the rest of the emotions come from the crowd. And sometimes, you don't need to tell the story with the emotions through facial expression. You can tell it through how people move their arms on the snowmobile. If they're really intense, they're leaning up against the bars, and they're just focused. And I feel like since I've been taking photos of snowcross, I can see the emotion within the riders and how intense they are, because they're just dead on focus on winning. They are not going to be looking back at the racer behind them. And when you're trying to win, you're only focused on what's in front of you, not behind you.
For sure. And one thing about racing, it's the finish line creates cool photos. And what I've learned is when you see people a couple moments after and they're just kind of catching up to themselves, that creates some cool photos too.
Yes.
And they're just physically exhausted, and then they just look like they accomplished something. That's been some of my favorite photos I've been able to capture, most specifically at the Granite Series races, which I've done quite a bit of event coverage for them.
Mm-hmm. And did you cover Earth Day as well? Or?
No, I've never done Earth Day. They contract that to someone else.
Okay.
Like a bigger company. I'm not sure what they're doing this year. I actually got Heather Rothfork on the podcast next week to kind of talk about Earth Day and everything that's going there.
Yeah, because that's a really sweet event here in Central Minnesota. I love, and I'm stuck in the middle of, do I want to participate or do I want to take photos of it?
Yeah, no, there's no wrong answer there. The 5K, it's still going to be the downtown thing. That's going to be really fun. I think with now that COVID's kind of on its tail end, or they call it the quote unquote endemic that we're heading into, it's going to be quite the fiasco. I think it's going to be really fun. But the half, that one, I don't know where you would probably the finish line is probably the best place for photos there.
Yeah, the finish line. But, I might be a slow runner. It's a very slow runner.
But Devin, you are super fit. Let's talk about this a little bit. Like I see you're ripped. What do you do? How do you stay so lean?
Well, I go to the gym twice a day now. Typically I go to CrossFit 5 days a week. This morning I was at CrossFit, and then usually after CrossFit, I go straight to the gym and I just work on other muscle components, especially like the abs, which we don't really work on in CrossFit. So as soon as I'm done with CrossFit, I go say, hey, I'm going to the gym to work on my abs today. And I do that like twice a week, and it's a good workout regimen. For sure.
Now, CrossFit, how'd you decide you want to get into CrossFit? Because I've seen a couple CrossFit meets. I've never actually taken a class, but it is some of the most intense lifts that I see them do, or I could say most complicated lifts I see, athletes do. It's pretty remarkable stuff.
I used to hate CrossFit because I wasn't strong enough to lift up anything. And then I saw some friends do it, and I was visually inspired by a lot of the things I do. And I asked them, hey, how'd you get set up with CrossFit? And ever since I went for the first time, I loved it. And then it also helps with what I do for a career. So being able to jump down low and also be running and gunning with photos and videos, I just feel like it actually helps a lot with what I do.
For sure. So you're on the move with CrossFit. Which gym are you going to in town?
I'm going to Granite City CrossFit. It's in Waite Park with Jeremy Lang, amazing coach. Very amazing coach.
Sure. Are you ever going to compete in that space? Because I've seen you do a couple, at least I've seen stories you post, and
Yes.
you're covering events in some capacity.
Yes. So I'm going to be covering Game Day, which is going to be down in Shakopee next month. Reached out to them, and they put me on their team for shooting photos. And then earlier this last month, I went to my first event, and I loved it. And I was like, you know what? I want to go to the gym twice a week so I can compete. So I think I'm not going to be able to compete. I mean, I will compete, just not until fall of 2022.
Oh, that's so far away.
Yes, but I want to be in like the most peak, like the peak physique I could be in, just so I can crush it. I don't want to just go in and get dead last. So I've set some goals, and I told myself, there's people that go to the gym once a week. I want to be that person that goes twice a week because I want the progress to be quick. I want it to be good, and I want to do well in the competitions. I just really don't want to end up in last. I would feel really embarrassed if I did.
Yeah, it's not about being last. I've raced for the better part of 5 years. It's all about putting a baseline down and just seeking personal improvement from there.
Yep.
So think process, for example, am I getting stronger in reference of objective weights? But whenever you start to think about where you're placing in the field, it's a sticky wicket for comparing yourself to others.
Oh, yeah. And I've seen these competitions. They are some wicked athletes. They are fast. They are strong. And the thing about CrossFit is you don't have to be super strong to do it. You don't have to be super fit to join CrossFit. Everyone in all shapes and sizes join CrossFit, and that's what I love about it. And a lot of people have that misconception that it is super intense.
Oh, yeah, pretty intense. Because I've seen people who are really talented at CrossFit kind of cross over to, say, obstacle course racing. Because I think there's a nice transition point, because depending on how CrossFit, the competition goes, that can parallel, say, a Spartan race. Have you ever gotten into that?
No, but only heard about it.
Oh, man. I've done long distance triathlon, and it does nothing compared to a Spartan race. I did one Welch Village maybe 3 years ago, and I've done all kinds of obstacle course racing, but that one in particular was the most hurt I've put on my body. It was so intense. It was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. And I'm in pretty good shape.
Oh my God. Yeah, you are in good shape. You're biking and you're swimming triathlons. Like when I took those photos of you last year, I was like, holy A. This guy is an athlete.
Yeah. So Spartan Race, what they do, it's this particular one was their sprint, and it was so 5K is the sprint distance, but it doesn't account for, you're at Welch Village, which is a ski hill, and they purposely start you off on what's called Lookout. So it's like a 25% grade uphill, for about half mile just to start you off with. And then immediately when you're going downhill, they plunge you underwater. So you're wet head to toe, and then you start the race basically.
Oh, and I just bet you're just like dripped, soaking wet. It feels like an extra 10 pounds of weight.
Not only more weight, but everything's just slippery. And then of course, you're doing all these obstacles. And so you're going, I don't know, monkey bars, kinds of things and different versions of that. But if you fall off of them, then you're doing burpees. And the whole time you're just trying to say, oh, I don't want to do that, because the last thing I want to do is do like 100. I can't remember what the penalty is, but you always end up doing burpees because one of the challenges they have you throw a spear, Spartan. And the spear's like, I don't know how those Spartans did it, but it's like impossible to get the thing to stick. So no matter what, you're doing like 100 burpees.
Until you get it into the wall.
First time I've ever thrown up at a finish line was that race. There's pictures of me somewhere. I don't know where they are.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it was brutal.
Jeez. Oh, man. Is that happening again this year?
No, I don't think so. This is my personal opinion. CrossFit, obstacle course racing, I think it's on the downtick. I mean, COVID definitely threw a wrench in any kind of performance racing. I think there's fewer people getting into it just as, well, there should be more people because I think more people are working out now as a result of COVID.
Yes. But
racing in general, numbers are down, but I think it's going to come back up. But I don't know if those are actually going to return. I do see a potential transition. There's a High Rocks, which I've seen, which is kind of a unique spin of CrossFit. I don't know a ton about it, but it's something that's really popular in Europe. What I like about it is it's standard. Yeah. So what's really neat about it is, when you see a CrossFit, every movement, every competition, every workout, you're the best of that day. You're the best of that meet. Yeah. But every single one of these High Rocks meets, it's the same movements. It's the same everything. So if you compete in the US or you compete, I don't know, somewhere in Germany, to your point, how you stack up to the competition everywhere. I think that's kind of cool.
Oh, yeah. Because, that's really sweet because it kind of like already sets the bar and for everyone to compete. And, you just get better and better at those single movements. Whereas like CrossFit, you have to know all of them, but you might not be good at all of them. And you might not be super strong. I'm not super strong. And there's some movements I just cannot do in CrossFit where, High Rock, I could probably see myself doing.
And it's a running based thing, which is kind of unique. So it's like this strength mixed with running. And I will say, so I've done a lot of OCR. There was one in town that I think ended, but it was part of the Granite series, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. But one of the most fun ones I've done was actually you race with your bow. So I'm into bow hunting, and it was you shoot your bow, kind of like a biathlon, but with your bow.
Yes.
It was called Train to Hunt. But anyways, we don't have to talk about that. But that's another spin of this that I thought was equally as fun because it combined like another just dangerous factor of shooting your bow.
Oh my gosh.
Same thing.
There is actually someone in my own CrossFit that does tactical games. Have you heard of tactical games?
No, I haven't.
Tactical games is where it's just a form of CrossFit. Instead of like weights, they use sandbags. And they do like farmer's carries or the shoulder carries, squats, and then they also incorporate gun use into it. So anything that's like for officers or military personnel, they're pretty much the athletes that I see in these tactical games. And they're also really fit. And you kind of have to hit your mark because they score you on your accuracy when you hit targets and things like that. But it's also fast paced. And I find that to be super fun. I've never done it myself, but I think there's a competition coming up in June, and that'll be my first one that I just visually see. So,
for sure. So this is pretty similar. What they did is you did a 3D shoot, which meant you go around and you shoot these different targets, and they score you based on how well you did. But then the real fun is you are competing against the field in an obstacle course race where you're basically sprinting with your bow, shooting targets, and it's all time adjusted.
Mm-hmm.
And it's supposed to teach you the mental toughness. And I suppose you could relate this to, the photo video world where you always just have to be in the zone and paying attention.
Yes.
Just like how I can't figure out how to get this camera to work right now.
It's totally okay.
I can't be, this is why you need a crew, because you need someone to help operate this stuff. Cause this one's recording, that one's not.
Yeah.
Anyways, point of the story is it teaches you when you are absolutely exhausted and you have to hit a 30-yard shot. And if you miss or if you don't score and what they call the vitals, they actually have you do burpees. And
oh my gosh.
It was insane. It's just one of those things where if you're into hunting and you know that you have to hit a perfect shot under pressure, because if you've ever been into hunting, you know that you get these jitters, you get nervous, especially when you see this nice deer walk by and you just got to focus in. It's the same thing. They teach you to practice that mental toughness, just to zone everything out.
And if you miss it, you're punished with burpees.
Oh, burpees for sure. And it's always at that point just really uncomfortable. The whole point of it is you don't want to do them, and at that point you're just so exhausted. But yeah, Train to Hunt. That was super fun. I'll have to send a link to you.
Yes, please.
You ever got into hunting or bow hunting? Have you ever dabbled into that space?
I do have a compound bow.
Oh, you do? I didn't know that.
So I don't hunt, but I just shoot it for fun, just because it works out the back muscles. So I usually have mine cranked to 85 pounds now.
85 pounds, Devin. I shoot like 65.
I used to. But I feel like I'm working on my micro muscles, especially like doing CrossFit. And ever since CrossFit, I've been working on my micro muscles to pull a bow back to 85. And I think 90 is the optimal amount for pullback, which is 85 still is pretty much a lot of weight to pull back on. But huge difference when you're hitting a target, and the velocity of the arrow is just, I love it.
For sure. When it's cold and you're trying to pull back, I don't know what my bow is at. It's somewhere between, it's like 65 pounds. So I think my limbs are 70. But when it's cold outside, fall, getting into winter temperatures, because bow season, it can get pretty cold.
Mm-hmm.
It's so hard to be frozen solid and pull back, your first arrow pretty much for the day, and you're just frozen solid. It's something.
Oh my gosh. So have you shot anything with your bow yet, or?
Oh yeah. We're in Minnesota. It's like hunting capital right here.
But I feel like not everyone gets anything with their bow sometimes, and I'm just like, it's a hit and miss sometimes.
It can be, but you just have to learn to be very selective. And then in addition to that, the biggest thing, I think you just hit it right there. It's patience. It's just waiting for that perfect opportunity. I think a lot of people rush it. Mm-hmm. So they get so excited, and it kind of goes back to that nervous jitters that when you see a nice deer walk by, you're just trying to connect. But then you realize it's much more about hitting a perfect shot than spending 4 hours trying to track a very poorly hit deer.
Mm-hmm. Following the blood trail, that is hilarious.
No, once you get a little bit better, it just connect and move on, and deer will go down.
Oh my gosh. And did you go hunting this year?
Oh yeah, of course.
Anything?
Oh yeah. Yeah, photography, hunting, two things that I really enjoy. You have to show you some cool stuff a little bit later on that.
Yes, please. Yes.
So, Devin, you've successfully created a really impressive photo business, a Super Cooper shooter.
Mm-hmm.
You have a very distinct editing style, I think. How would you describe when you edit photos? If you were to describe that to me, because we're clearly just auditory right now, how would you describe your style to someone that hasn't seen your work before?
See, that is still like a tough question for me to even answer myself. I usually ask people that, and they just tell me, "Hey, your work has tons of contrast, a little bit of vibrance." And the thing is, when I shoot photos for myself, I edit them a lot different than how I might edit a wedding photo, because I want my wedding photos to look a little bit more vibrant, warm. I love the warm tones. And then when it comes to like my own personal work, I like to add lots of contrast and sharpness, and to make them a little bit more punchy. And I also do, I try and make them a little bit moodier And essentially with wedding photos, I don't like doing that because I like them to be warm and bright versus warm, dark, and moody.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, also having good vibrance is what I love about them.
So when you're shooting, say, wedding day photography, there's a general, I think, staple of wedding photography where they're a little bit more overexposed. They're generally a little bit brighter. Mm-hmm. Is that kind of your experience with shooting weddings, or do you stick to your style as you shoot those?
I stick to my style. I shoot all my photos underexposed, and that's just to reserve all the details. And if I do overexpose, it's probably because I want to make some details disappear, which is kind of like weird to say. Like a blown out sky, I would underexpose. But say if I can't see my subject, I'll overexpose, and I'd rather have the subject exposed properly than the sky exposed. And then I also shoot in a color balance or a temperature, which is warm, and that just, I see it as visually what the image might be when I go back into post-production. So by seeing it warm, I'd be like, oh, okay, sweet. I just add a little bit more contrast, a little bit more vibrance, and then twist my colors however I like them.
For sure. So you really enjoy a warmer tone. Do you achieve that in camera, or is that something that you generally more flavor post-production? Because you shoot RAW, obviously.
Yeah. And that's the point of RAW. Going JPEG, you're not going to be playing with the colors as much because there's no detail in swapping colors. So if I shot accidentally cold with RAW, I can always go back and make it warm. So that's what I like about RAW, is that I know I can always go warm, and that's the desire I have, is just warm tones.
And you're shooting Sony, so you're shooting, I assume, I don't know, A4, I think is their one with that high megapixel count, right?
Well, I do have the Sony A7R4, and I just recently picked up the Sony 4, which is 36 megapixels. Okay. Less than 60. Big difference. Mm-hmm. And some people say that they don't see the difference, but when you're in post-production, you see the difference every single time I look at a photo. I'm like, yeah, that is 60 megapixels. That is 24 megapixels. And being able to blow up an image is super important. Be able to have that high quality resolution image. And say if I want to stick it on a garage door, I can. And then there's also negatives for 60 megapixels and positives for 34 megapixels. So that's why I have two different cameras that shoot different megapixels.
For sure. I always lean towards my R6, which is 24, because I think the file size is more manageable. And I just rarely ever see myself, like with my R5, which I think shoots like 50, cropping in a ton and taking a cropped in image, and most of my work, with exceptions of stuff I've printed on my walls, it's usually just social media, which you don't need much for that.
No, not at all. I think whenever I shoot with my Sony A7R4, which is the 60 megapixels, I'm always cropping. I'm just known to crop. There's not a single photo I've posted that I did not crop. And sometimes the benefit of having such a high megapixel image is being able to take one image. If you get your focus right or in a particular way, you can turn that one image into like 4 or 5 images, which is sweet. It's like dividing a photo into thirds, fourths, fifths, just like a pentagon.
Right. And I agree completely. Like when I shoot sports photography and I'm really zoomed in, on a telephoto lens, it's really fun, zooming in further post-production and kind of catching some of those details that you didn't necessarily think you caught. But I tend to say that tongue in cheek, because when I shoot race coverage, it's a real pain shooting everything in RAW, having like 2,500 images to comb through, when you just did a race and you're like, I don't want to edit all these. I just JPEG, but I ended up editing them or whatever, copy and paste.
And I have noticed when I do shoot with my Sony A7R that when I take my images and put them into JPEGs after like post-production, you save them, they're JPEGs now. You can't zoom in to see all those finer details that you once could see. So you're kind of like stuck at that format. Whereas the RAW, you have so much more zoomable space to like dive into those pixels.
Yeah, you make me like, so when I first got into photography like 3 years ago, I immediately went Canon. So I think of that like, what's that movie, Twilight? That's probably like Team Jacob, and
Yes.
Which one's the cooler one? I can't remember. Is it Jacob?
Well, it depends on who you ask. I would say
Edward. That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking. I don't know which one would be Edward, which one would be Jacob in this conversation.
I don't know. Because I would still I would love to have a Canon camera. Just because the colors are so nice, just straight out of camera with these Canons. And Sony, you still get that like green pigment or tone, and it bugs me. But in post production, it doesn't bug me because I'm just messing with the colors anyways, taking away those greens. But I feel like with Canon, you don't have to do as much color correction, which is
Canon colors. I mean, I don't have much to compare to, but it's been really fun. But the only reason I went with a Canon camera at that time, and I kind of wish I would have went Sony because they were moving in the space of mirrorless a lot faster than Canon was. I think they had more mirrorless options, and everything's mirrorless now.
Yeah.
But the only reason I went with it is because it felt nice in my hands, and that was it.
Yes, and yeah, Canons do feel great in the hands compared to a Sony. I have full frame now, and going from a crop frame, I used to shoot Nikon, and I was going to jump on Canon, but mirrorless, like you said, was just coming out, and Sony was so far ahead of everybody. And they also started using in-camera stabilization and being able to stop down to extra stops, even with your shutter speed, to still get super sharp photos was huge, especially when you're capturing action photos. And then you don't have to worry about buying so much expensive lenses because your camera has in-camera stabilization. So I was looking at price points and also what is really compatible with the work that I do.
Yeah, I for sure think Canon, their RF lenses are super nice. They're, I think, unmatched in quality, but you pay so much for that quality. And that was one thing I really liked about the DSLR space when I was in there, is because you could get Tamron lenses. And that's what I shot for probably the first 2 years. Loved every second of it. I thought they were amazing. But then, I went RF and I was like, oh, yeah, this is why they're expensive.
Yeah, and they're super nice quality glass. And Sony has their lineup, which is, I say, equivalent to Canon's lineup with their RF lenses. The glass is just, it's not matchable when it comes to Tamron.
Yeah, I agree. And I still think my favorite lens to date, and I'm kind of, it's always one of those things where when you have lenses or when you have a business and photography and videography, you got to think about what stuff am I not using? I'm just going to get rid of it because there's no point to have shelf collectors, even though I have a lot of shelf collectors now. But I had this lens, it was a 35 to 150. Favorite lens. It was a variable aperture, so it was like 2.8 on the low end, and then when you got to 150, it was f4. Still think that was my favorite lens to date. But when I started to buy primes, I just never used it anymore. I was like, I'll just sell it.
Yeah, because when you look at primes and the zoomable lenses, I think there's a lens or a glass difference for the lens zooming in, zooming out, where the prime, it's one focal length. The glass is always going to be exactly where it's at. It's designed to take amazing photos, amazing videos, and the quality that comes out of those images is immaculate.
Yeah, I love that 50 millimeter f1.2. I have the 85. Awesome lens too. Is there much difference between them? Not really. Do I need both? Probably not. But the 85 is a really fun one to shoot on.
Yeah, I'm in your space right now. I'm looking at all these images. I'm like, that's a 70 to 200. That's a macro lens. That's a 50, and the 85s are like the biggest ones that I've seen on your wall that like have the biggest story to them, because you have the bokeh, which you really love, and the sharpness to them and the compression. Yeah, I just love your work with your 85 that I've just seen around. For sure.
Yeah, thanks, Devin. I think 85, just the focal length is good. I like the compression, so how the background just like pulls up right to the back of the person. But it's amazing. So the Canon f1.2, when you shoot wide open and you're using the eye autofocus, and I'm sure Sony's is really good, but it is so spot on. Like you hit like on 10 images, like 9 of the 10 are in focus, like perfectly in focus. Like I had the bowling ball 85 millimeter before this one, like the EF version of it.
Yeah.
10 photos, maybe 1 would be somewhat in focus. Just garbage if you shot wide open.
Oh, and that's sweet because like when you're looking at it, you just zoom in, you're like, wow, the eye is just tack sharp. Like how is that even possible nowadays?
Yeah, it's been fun. I think trying to think why I like photography. It's probably because it's really technical, but to the point of what I really like about your work, Devin, is you kind of balance working through the technicalness of the photos, but you just have a very unique way of capturing the environment, the person in the environment, the reactions. It's just been really fun to see your work, and I'm excited to keep seeing it.
Thank you. Yes.
So where do you see, outside of Red Bull and some of these weddings that you got going, where do you see your business going in the next couple of years?
That's also like another question I'm still asking myself. One, I'd like to get out of weddings sooner. But I feel like I'm going to be with weddings for maybe about another year or so. And then maybe traveling a lot more and producing a lot more prints. Because I love seeing prints on other people's walls, and I love seeing my own prints on their walls as well. And I would love to work with more commercial entities. So like brands. One would be, at first I thought about working with North Face, but they're such a big, large chain that I think I work with probably new brands that are coming out. So ones that are not so big that they have their own production teams, but someone that needs like an influencer that not only loves their brand, but also will capture content for it too, to, you know, share their work. And
Yeah, for sure. I see a trend in businesses where they'll probably continue to hire people internally, you know, because I don't think like camera gear has ever been as accessible. Like last year, so as you can tell, I'm kind of a gear enthusiast. I like buying camera stuff, but it's become so accessible that I think there's not that much cost to entry. And so companies can easily, you know, get into it really easy without having to, I don't know, hire someone out or to use someone external.
And that's where I see it too is, you have these companies that can hire out media teams, and there's companies that will hire out just freelance photographers or freelance videographers that will produce gravitating work. So they bring in more customers or more sales is the ultimate goal.
Yeah, I think working for businesses is fun. Obviously, I do a lot of photo video work for Rollga, but it's really fun to just exploring, you know, your own passions with it.
Yes.
It's hard to, for me, one thing I really struggle with photography is why do I like it? It's I like the aspect of it being a potential lucrative hobby that you can go out and make some money if you want, and it can be really lucrative if you get hooked up with the right people. But I think when you approach it from a strict objective standpoint like that, you kind of lose, at least I struggle with enjoying it as much.
Yes. And I would love to touch on that is, you know, there's a lot of people that do it for the income side of it, and they get so burnt out. And there's at a point where I felt a little bit burnt out doing photos and video, because I just inquired so much more work. And then I just switched my mindset. I said, I shouldn't be thinking like that. I should be enjoying this. This is what I love to do. No one gets to like go out and really enjoy what they love to do for a career. And, you know, the career gives you so many more doors to open, different avenues to drive on. And that's what I love about photos and videos is it also opens up doors to meet new hands, shake new hands, meet new faces, and create new partnerships with different people and relationships with different people, which is ultimately my biggest goal, is just to have awareness and just connect.
For sure. The doors that working with businesses opens, especially small businesses, I think it's really fun because there's a lot of give and take networking when you start working for small companies, but it becomes really fun. But you brought a point up that was really interesting to me about working with influencers, and that's where I really see this market going, where it's like the small pocket of someone that's really good at photo video, but working with a couple people that are really good at like selling products or pitching products, that kind of thing. I really see that the future of where someone who wants to do a lot with photo video, that's probably where the space is going.
Yeah, I see that a lot right now, even with TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. You have all these people that are just whipping out their phones and showing off products, or even telling how much they love it because they love it. And if people see other people loving things, they're gonna love it just as much, because we all like hearing other people referrals. So if I was to refer you to a friend, you already have a good judgment of my friend because I already told you so much about him. And that same goes with like products and businesses. And if I tell you, hey, Grant City CrossFit is amazing, you're more likely to go because you heard my perspective on it, and that's a friend's perspective.
Mm-hmm. So I agree 100%. And where photography is going is, this is kind of an interesting question for you, and I'll paint it up a little bit. Something I struggle with being a content creator. I create a lot of content.
Yes.
I think this year I've created like over 25 short videos for Rollga that we've thrown up on social media that have done well, gotten likes, clicks, all that stuff. But one thing I've started to have a very dislike for is actually social media. Like I uninstalled TikTok from my phone because I was like, I'm sick of how much time I'm spending going through this thing and looking at all these videos that are just so shallow, that don't provide much more than just some quick eye catch.
Yes. And I'm on that same train right now. I haven't been posting to social media as often because I don't want to be glued to my phone. And the thing is, it's kind of like a double-edged sword. It's beneficial, but it's not beneficial, especially like growing your business. If you're primarily using social media to grow your business, not posting a photo will tell someone that's viewing your page that you're not active. And people like to see people that are active because they know that your work is worth getting, or your work is worth purchasing. So like recently I just stopped for a whole month. I just stopped posting. I just wanted to work on myself and work on creating my own content, my own things like redesign my website. And then I realized, I started posting photos again, and then business came right back in. And then I saw that and how great that is for other businesses too.
Sure. Isn't that the truth about marketing though? And this is something I learned with getting into, I started in a freelance space, had a website, and I was like, all right, going to get this website up because I'm going to create this beautiful website and have all these beautiful photos and just all the creative imagery. And then finally launched it. And then like no calls came in because it's 100% about how you market yourself and how you drive traffic to your website.
Yeah. I was just talking to a friend last night about driving traffic to their website. My website generates a lot of good inquiries. I think I book maybe about 98% of the inquiries that come in through my website. And I think it's because my info is current, my images are current. And the thing is it takes work to stay up to date. And not everyone has that option to always be updating their website or updating their Instagrams and Facebooks. It's a lot of work.
For sure. I have so much respect for you, Devin. Like the amount that goes into being a successful freelancer, I don't think a lot of people appreciate like how much effort and how much energy it takes. And that's why I'm like, God, Devin, he's a go-getter. And that's the people I like to have on the show, are just those that get after it.
It is a 9-to-5 job, marketing. And as I'm doing it, I'm like, I have to hire someone else to do this for me. But that also takes away from being personable. Because when you start hiring on a team, it's no longer you being face to face with your with my own clients, and they're wondering who's doing the marketing, and whoever's doing the marketing isn't as attached to those clients as you were. So
yeah, no one's going to care about your business as much as you will.
Yeah. So I thought about hiring someone to do my marketing and create my posts, but I thought, they're not going to be into it as much as I am. So I'd rather take the work.
Sure. Yeah. And that's that sticky edge with, growing a business is how much do you let go? How much people do you take on? Because you don't want to grow at some rate that is unsustainable by taking on too many people, but you also don't want to take on too much risk too by like, hey, let me go buy this 5,000 square foot office because that's the space I want to get into.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Have you thought about getting your own space and bigger space?
We've talked about it potentially with Rollga. We've thought about getting a Rollga gym that's really dedicated towards, the fitness side of things, but also just a great place for content creation. But I've learned it's just a lot of stuff to have to worry about versus kind of packing it in. I have a lot of lights, I have a lot of fixtures and all kinds of things. And it's almost easier just knowing like, this is my grab bag. Like when I'm on stuff on the go, these are the lights I need to take with versus having a dedicated space I now have to live out of, half my time.
Oh yeah. That's one like negative to your own, that kind of space.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to live in a crappier living space. And if COVID's taught me anything working from home is awesome. It provides a lot of flexibility, but there's a lot of detriment where you're just at home.
Yeah, you're at home all the time and you're not going out because there's no one else trying to go out because they're working at home too.
Right. And that's maybe something we can touch on is you seem like you're never at home. Like you are always on the go, like on these trips, van life #, or even just from not spending time at home. Have you ever thought about packing it up and just saying sayonara, Minnesota?
That is like the plan. There's a lot of planning that goes into it, budgeting, being sustainable. Right now it's sustainable. But as I look into it, I want to do van life as building my own. So budgeting the build, buying the van, buying the things I want to do on the road. So I don't have to think about making those purchases in the future, but more so I'll make them right now. And then by the time it happens, sweet, I don't have to worry about making those purchases in the future. And the biggest part about being on the road is having a portable setup. So I always edit on a desktop computer, which I just sold like a couple days ago. Huge, massive desktop setup. Loved it, super fast. And then the Macs came out with the M Pros chips, and I just love it ever since. So that really opened the door for portability and being able to edit on the go and the speed. So with technology, it's a little bit pricier, but it saves you a lot more time in the long run, which is, time is kind of money.
Oh, for sure. I couldn't agree more. With everything I buy, it's with an efficiency mindset.
Yes.
These external recorders that I can't get to work right now, they were purchased specifically to record in ProRes, which my computer eats up, loves it. Versus shooting these compressed codecs where it's like my computer hates those.
And it takes more time in the editing studio, takes more time away from the things you love to do outside the studio.
For sure. I sit there and I either try to create proxies, which I hate doing, or I transcode, which creates more hard drive space. And like that footage that you just shot takes another hour to transcode. And it's just like, man, I don't want to deal with this. But yeah, if these external monitors worked as they were supposed to plan, this would have made things a lot easier.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I just can't imagine. Like, ever since I've been jumping into video, I've realized there is so much memory that is being taken up just to process these videos. Whereas photos, I know how much memory I need. With video, you don't. You could go through a terabyte. With photos, you can go through maybe 200 gigabytes, which is a difference.
Oh, for sure. I've shot a 1 hour recording in what Canon calls their 4K HQ. Yeah, it was like 500 gigs. It's crazy.
Oh my gosh. And the thing about videos is you can't really delete them because you can always use them for future use.
Well, you think you're going to use them, but you end up just like storing them away.
Yes. And then all that storage is, you wish you could use that storage, but you can't. With photos, I feel like I can take my photos, convert them to JPEGs, and now I have way more space than I did before.
Yeah, I'm always in that same bucket with like how much stuff do I want to save? How much stuff do I want to subscribe to a cloud service so I can keep, like for me, the reason why I got so much into photography more than anything was just I got a young family now, just to kind of capture those memories. And there's something about being a photo dad, which I think is really special. Like I have all these photos from pretty much every day of the year. My kid was 1 year old, and it's just so fun to reflect on not only those daily changes, but they're not like crappy iPhone photos or like, and even if I do use an iPhone, because I have an eye for photography now, I know how to take those photos a little better.
And then switching up your angles, pulling out that zoom, the works.
Oh yeah. It's been super heartwarming. Yeah. Liking photos. And that's why I really appreciate people like you, Devin, is because when I see your work, it just inspires me to be better. And I'm just super excited about you with this upcoming year. You sounds like you got a lot on your plate.
I have a lot on my plate, and the way I look at it is going brick by brick and not looking at the whole wall.
For sure. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap up, Devin. How can people find you?
They can find me on my website, www.supercoopermedia.com, or if they like to find me personally on Instagram, supercoopermedia on Instagram, or supercoopershooter is who I am on Instagram. So that's a way to find me. And even so, I'm Devin.
What if they want to see prints?
Prints. I'm still working on my prints. I have my gallery on my new website. I haven't really released yet. But the goal is to release my prints by end of February. So they're just slowly entering my website bit by bit.
All right. Well, we'll get them linked in somewhere.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, Devin.
All right. Thank you, Dane.